Namaste to all of you. A very warm welcome to this morning's program of Laghu Udyog Bharati and Pragya Bharati jointly organizing this program for discussing the way ahead for the industry, especially the SME industry, in the wake of this Chinese Wuhan coronavirus. So what we would do is initially Sri Charan Ji would, who is a member of the national, he is a national committee member of Laghu Udyog Bharati. He would do his opening remarks and he would introduce Laghu Udyog Bharati and would give his opening remarks. Post that, Vidyasagar Ji will give his comments, and then we'll go to Pawan Ji for his keynote address. So Sri Charan Ji, please go ahead.
నమస్కారాలండి. నా పేరు శ్రీ చరణ్ కుమార్. లఘు ఉద్యోగ భారతి రాష్ట్ర ఉపాధ్యక్షుడు, తర్వాత నేషనల్ కమిటీ మెంబర్ గౌరవనీయులు విద్యాసాగర్ జీ, గిరిధర్ జీ అండ్ ఈరోజు వచ్చి ముఖ్య వక్త శ్రీ పవన్ జీ, అందరికీ నమస్కారాలు. మిగతా అందరికీ స్వాగతం. మనం ఈరోజు లఘు ఉద్యోగ భారతి 26వ జన్మదినం సందర్భంగా ఈ ప్రోగ్రాం చేస్తున్నాం. April 25, 1994 Laghu Udyog Bharati, on the backdrop of globalization and Dunkel initiatives, oka appadi ఆర్థిక అవసరాల బట్టి ఓపెన్ చేయడం జరిగింది మన్మోహన్ సింగ్ గారు. అయితే ఆ రోజుల్లో మనందరికి తెలుసు మన ఎకానమీ చాలా వీక్ గా ఉంది. మళ్ళీ ఒక మల్టీనేషనల్ కంపెనీస్ మళ్ళీ మన దేశానికి వచ్చి ఇక్కడ వాళ్ళ సామ్రాజ్యాన్ని ఏర్పాటు చేస్తాయి. I'm audible to you?
No. You can. That LUB introduction is happening.
Hello.
Yeah. Unmute just okay నిమిషం. No. చూసుకో నీ వైఫై చూసుకో అది. I'm able to see you, Bhavan.
No, I can see you.
Somebody is unmuted.
One minute.
Hello? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Girdhar Garu?
Yeah.
I think there is some technical glitch with Pawan Gardi. Maybe he's not able to hear Antonadu. But are you able to see?
I can hear now.
Okay. Right. Right, Pawan. Srishan Garu, can you restart please if you don't mind?
Thank you.
Yeah, Sri Charan Ji, I think he's lost his connection, it looks like. There's some issue with him. You can see that his video is off.
Girdhar Garu, you can introduce about Pragya Bharati. Meanwhile, Sri Charan can come back. We can ask him.
Yeah, because we have participants who probably may not understand Telugu. I think I'll stick to English. I hope that's okay for all of you.
Because my connection is disconnected.
He's come back. Sri Charan Ji, go ahead. Sri Charan Ji, I think there are some participants here who don't understand Telugu.
Okay, do you want me to talk in English? Okay.
Yeah, that's better, I think.
Thank you, sir. And sir, I'm in a remote place and maybe frequently this I may be discontinued. I'm sorry for that. And I once again welcome all the State President Sri Vidyasagar Ji and Pragya Bharati Girdhar Ji and our main speaker Sri Pawan Ji. And now today we are celebrating our 26th annual day of Laghu Udyog Bharati. Our organization been started in 1994 on April 25 to help the economy and to build the country through the betterment of small-scale industries. And anyway, everybody acknowledges that small-scale industry is the basic backbone of any economy in the world. And unfortunately, we did not have a proper representation pan-India national-wise. And we have many organizations across the country limiting themselves to regional and local. And there is no one single organization to represent MSMEs in the central capital, because MSME policies are made by the central government and implemented by the state government. There was a lacking in that, and our national thinkers, nationalistic thinkers, and thought that we should have one national organization to represent all MSMEs across the country, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari and from Manipur to Gujarat. And today we can proudly say, after after completing 26 years, our organization is spread all over the country. Almost all districts are covered. Nearly 90% districts are covered, and our strength is 24,000. And we can proudly say we are the only organization which has a Delhi office and regularly liaising with the central government and influencing the government to form MSME policies and to help the MSMEs. And some of the key achievements of Lagujio Bharti, well, we all know that first success is starting SSI, Ministry of SSI in the 2002-2003. After that, it has been changed to MSME. And since then, Lagujio Bharti is very vocal in Delhi circles about small scale industries, participating every time budgetary preparatory meetings and all other activities. And some of the other successes are our participation in our membership in GST Council, permanent membership in GST Council. Our ex-president of Sri Om Prakash Ji Mittal is a GST Council member, and which decides the GST Council, which decides the GST policies every 3 months. And because of Lagujio Bharti, we have a GST exemption up to 1.5 crore, purely because of the Lagujio Bharti. These are some of the key achievements of Lagujio Bharti, and Lagujio Bharti is trying last 10-15 years with a full capacity to save the MSMEs, and we went to the extent of blocking the Parliament bill on Lagujio Bharti definition. And still we are discussing with the central government to safeguard our interest in MSME. And as per the current situation, we are going very unprecedented crisis because of the COVID-19. Never experienced crisis. This is this is going to change a lot. Whether we do, how many MSMEs will survive is a typical question. We need to look into that post-COVID, because of the lot of burdens like payments of wages without production. And once post-COVID, once we open our establishments, we don't know what is the status of our orders, how is the status of our market, and how we can mobilize our working capital funds. All these are the big issues, and I thank you, Prajna Bharti and Vidyasagar Ji, conducting this meeting to address the basic concerns of the small scale industries after this COVID. And thank you for this opportunity to giving to me to speak. And I'll hand over to Sri Girdhar Ji to moderate this. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, Sricharan Ji. Thanks a lot for that. I think before I call Vidyasagar Ji, I'll just give my remarks to this. Prajna Bharati is an organization which was founded 28 years back, and we have been working among the intellectuals of the country. So intellectuals, as you know, can span across several verticals, be it the legal vertical, or be it the accountancy and taxation vertical, or the science, academics, think tanks, security matters, women's issues, you name it. Anything to do with the intellect of this country, Prajna Bharati has been in the forefront for the past 28 years. Among the founding members, Sri Ram Madhav Ji and Hanuman Chaudhary Garu were there. After Ram Madhav Ji moved on to central stage in politics, it is a young team that we have now taken over. We are doing our small bit. Nobody can match Ram Madhav Ji's skills, but then we are keeping the flame flying, I mean, at least burning for some time. And we have been conducting many seminars, conferences on many topics, and we have done programs on economy related several times. And Prajna Bharati has been regularly conducting pre and post budget meetings as well. In fact, this year, Laghu Udyog Bharati was involved with the pre-budget meeting where we had invited M.R. Venkatesh ji. M.R. Venkatesh, as we all know, is a chartered accountant and now changed his profession into being a lawyer. So, and we run a magazine, monthly English magazine by name, Bharatiya Prajna. And we award annually a scholar award by the name Prajna Puraskar to some eminent person who has contributed significantly to the cause of glory of Bharat. This essentially is what we do. We are happy to be associated with Laghu Udyog Bharati in matters concerning this particular segment, that small and medium enterprises, which are the backbone of our Indian economy. I happen to be a chartered accountant and an LLB as well. So for me, it's like I've been there, seen it, done it. And so I understand the pain that goes through this particular industry. And I can empathize, and I'm very much part of that particular segment. So this Chinese Wuhan coronavirus has shaken up a lot of things which never ever happened in the human history. Forget about living memory of any of us, but it has never happened in the past 10 to 15,000 years of human history. This never happened. There is no calamity which can match what has happened on this particular Chinese virus. So, yes, as Sri Charanji rightly said, there will be a lot of turmoil, a lot of industries would close down. Some industries would close down permanently. For instance, we'll have a serious challenge to industries which are related to entertainment, hospitality, and probably event management. All these are going to take a significant hit, because the large gathering of people is going to come down significantly. Similarly, probably something to do with large gathering of marriages, religious issues, they also are likely to come down, at least in the near-term future. So industries associated with that are going to take a huge hit. Similarly, some industries are going to do well. Maybe people who are in sanitary-related issues, cleanliness-related issues, or waste management issues, some of them could get a boost. And people who are in the medical or medical intermediary industries, they are likely to do well. So we're going to have a significant change in all what's going to happen in the consumption pattern of the public itself. Industry cannot be different than the consumption pattern of the public. So as the public perception changes, probably SME segment also need to reorient itself. You don't wait till you are actually thrown out of the industry and you see the writing on the wall and you stop doing your business now, start something else and then move on. Because this is how the world is going to change. So this is the scenario that we are all in, friends. So we thought Laghu Udyog Bharati and Prajna Bharati jointly will come together, and then we hear out people, try and brainstorm and find out what is the way ahead for us. How do we handle this? Nobody has an answer, because ultimately after we are able to control this Chinese virus, how the world will be, we really don't know. Most of us have not even stepped out of the house, so we don't know how the world is there outside. It's probably completely changed, and how people behave is completely different. So in this situation, as an SME, as the core base strength of this economy, in this Indian culture, we are actually representatives of Indian culture, because what we produce is actually what the culture is wanting us to produce. So given these two, I would be very happy that all of you share your experience and thoughts, and then we can collectively, jointly try and come to some kind of, recommendation to the government. Government is listening from many angles, but then the voice from the ground is very crucial and very important. So I would request all of you to actively participate in this, and let's all collectively try and protect our core economic segment, which is SME. With those initial remarks, I would hand it over to Vidyasagar ji to make his comments.
Thank you, Girdhar Garu. Thanks, Sri Charanji, for wonderful introduction of Laghu Udyog Bharati and Prajna Bharati. It's always been a pleasure that we do some activities and some kind of seminar sort of thing with you, and it's really appreciable that you have done all this organization. Thank you very much for this. Yes, we really don't know what, where and which direction we are going and where we are going. So that's how we wanted this particular Zoom meeting. And I requested my friend, today's guest speaker, and my dear friend Pawan Kumar, my colleagues from Laghu Udyog Bharati, Telangana, and elsewhere, friends from Pragna Bharati, and other esteemed participants. Before thankfully inviting Pawan for his talk on the agenda today, we would like to share our needs and appropriate representations made to our governments in center and in Telangana. While I wouldn't like to repeat the downsides of economy and the health challenges as we as a country and the world is facing, because we have been addressing in almost all the interactions, I would agree with Mr. Girdhar Mamidi that the world will definitely going to change as pre and post COVID-19. We would always say this is pre-COVID or post-COVID, and the world and our living patterns will never be the same. The world will never be the same. The living patterns will never be the same. We don't have money for luxury goods, and we need to revamp the whole thing. So our lives will never be changed. And during the COVID period of lockdown, every industry and the team associated is facing a tough time, which the human mankind has never thought or experienced in their wildest dreams. But we have learned a lot through this pandemic. As Laghu Udyog Bharati, our endeavor and mission is to ensure all the MSMEs are taken care in this testing period by the respective governments and banks in the immediate and short term. Our objective is that none of the companies, this is our mission, our objective is that none of the companies should suffer and go out of business post-lockdown, and for which the lawmakers, judiciary, and other stakeholders should understand the intensity of the problems and ground realities we are facing. While various models are being worked out for payment of wages and salaries, ESI, PF, and things like that, and banks supporting, the companies needs to be supported by employees and workmen by understanding the core realities of the business. A detailed and comprehensive representation has been made by LUB National Committee to the Finance Minister on the 7th of April. And various other requests and follow-ups have been made to tide over the needs during the lockdown period. We're not talking about a restart period. We're talking about lockdown period problems. Though the RBI and Government of India through the Finance Ministry has extended and worked out various measures and support to MSMEs and other companies, many companies are not able to avail the same from the banks, which is highly discriminatory. The 25% ad hoc limits by all the banks, including private banks, for 3 years with a moratorium of 6 months, have to be made available to all units as obligatory and non-discriminatory, and not keeping in view the magnitude of, and it has to be an obligatory keeping in view the magnitude of the epidemic and collapse of complete system of business plan of the companies. As Mr. Girdhar said, we don't know whether the orders are there, my stocks are blocked, my receivables are not coming. It is a complete collapse of the business plans or business system in the country and globally, worldwide. So Government of India needs to support the banks and these monies in form of cash and guarantees and waivers of interest during the closure period. We are not asking much. We're just asking for us to survive. As on 28th February 2020, as per RBI report, the total credit to MSMEs, including priority sector, is roughly 20 lakh crores, which is, to be precise, 19.45 lakhs. This will, and then what we are asking is the government to support 25% to these banks in terms of cash immediately or in terms of guarantee in 3 years when the monies are being given to MSMEs as 25% ad hoc. This will help MSMEs survive, sustain, get to normalcy, and also grow at a reasonable pace post-lockdown and COVID. On the companies and entrepreneurs side, we have to do our lot, our bit. We being creators of wealth and provider of employment should take the mantle of working smartly, adapt quickly to the new requirements in the market, the new requirements globally, and with stringent measures and any changes in business models and plans. We need to really change the business model and plans of individual industry. We cannot say that we would like to do what we have been doing. We have to check up we have to go along with the world. We have to go along with the Indian requirement and change our plans. Cost-cutting exercises have to be the main responsibility of all the companies. India should practice self-reliance in terms of goods and services. Price-sensitive products can be sourced locally, and indigenization should be on the top of our agenda for next 5 to 7 years for both domestic and export markets. Let's take a lesson from this epidemic and turn it into positive opportunities for our future Indian generations. Let India, along with huge domestic requirement, be #1 exporter of all the products globally. With this, I thank everybody for your patient hearing, and I request, with this, I would like our today's speaker, Pawan Kumar, to address the participants. Thank you very much.
Friends, Pawan Kumar ji is an eminent lawyer. He has handled many corporate clients in the fields of corporate legal issues and financial funding and many other issues. So he is well versed with the challenges faced by this segment. Pawanji, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Sricharan, Giridhar, and Vidyasagar. It's a pleasure to be amongst all of you. And as somebody who's in the profession and who day in and day out works primarily on corporate and finance-related matters, whether in the realm of private equity, venture capital, or in terms of debt funding, and someone who's worked with banks and funds and everybody else, I have a similar opinion like the rest of you, and it won't be any different, that these are difficult and testing times. The capital available is depleted, and along with that, so have businesses shrunk. The question, therefore, now before everyone, not just MSMEs, but everyone alike, is whether this is a situation that can be bailed out, and if it can, what are the means of doing it? And more importantly, how is it that the government, or in terms of the private sector, has to collaborate amongst each other to bring about synergies so that there is efficiency in administration and functioning, reduction of the cost, so as to make the businesses more profitable and healthy. Now, the underlying premise to the entire argument here, which we're going to kind of discuss in a while, is that in the face of it, the government itself has told all of us that you are going to face a situation of bankruptcy. Now, nobody is able to read this, but then the actions of the government are evident and they're in our face. The whole point and the purpose behind amending the insolvency and bankruptcy laws, the single purpose behind increasing the threshold for admission of an insolvency claim from 1 lakh to 1 crore, and the fact that now they want to give some kind of a relief by saying that for the next 6 months to 1 year, insolvency cases against companies and corporates will not be entertained, is only because the government does realize that in times such as these, most companies, if not all, are definitely going to default on their payment obligations. Now, if they default on the payment obligations, the necessary corollary will be for everyone to file cases against everyone else, not realizing that what is good for goose is good for gander. You and I are both sailing in the same boat in terms of not able to run the business. Neither are we in a position to make payments, nor are we making money. So the question becomes, where is this capital going to come from for us to continue to function? Now, in addition to that, the larger issue in terms of, well, I'm unable to make payments for my business and operate my plants and machinery or my services for that moment, I have been emburdened with an additional burden of having to pay salaries to my workmen and employees in full, without even getting any benefits with regard to leave of work or anything else. At a time when the industry is facing such difficulties to further levy such kind of obligations now, whether it's a legal obligation or a moral obligation, it's a secondary issue. But even for the government to come down that path is very questionable in that sense. Definitely, it's a welfare state. The intentions of the government are definitely to kind of take care of everybody's well-being. But is the well-being of the sector, especially such as the MSME, which is the largest employer in the country, have their concerns been duly addressed? The government may have very simply provided the RBI to make funds available, but have these funds actually percolated down to each of the businesses? The wide discretion that has been granted in the hands of the banks to decide whether to fund or not to fund is the largest question, and that's where the problem arises. In the face of it, when the government itself is anticipating so many insolvency scenarios, and then when the borrowing by the banks is eventually a repayment obligation on the bank to the RBI itself, what guarantees is the government giving to these banks in terms of ensuring that tomorrow, if the company or the borrower defaults, it is still going to take care? And unless such guarantees are given, there is really not going to be the true spirit of the intention of providing a stimulus or a financial package being actually implemented. Now, let me just, as a lawyer, so I'll just take a step back and I'll just talk about a few laws that I'm sure all of you are already aware of. And I'll only touch upon three aspects. One is the contracts, commercial contracts, which are predominantly of concern. Then in terms of real estate, which is in terms of leasing and the consequences, because all of us have our factories and businesses being run out of commercial establishments and need space. Thirdly, in terms of banks and what is happening. Now, everybody is calling this situation today as a force majeure. The question, however, is this really a force majeure? And will this qualify for it to be a force majeure? Now, we all know that a force majeure is an act of God, which is beyond our control. But the question is that the impact of a force majeure on a commercial or a corporate transaction has to be understood in light of what the Contract Act provides for. A Contract Act under Section 56 says that when certain actions beyond your control take place, you have the option to call the act of God and come out of your performance obligations. Now, the important part here is that the word used in the law is the word impossible, which it says that the contract has to be such that it has become impossible to perform. Merely because the contract has become onerous to perform, it does not mean that it is an event for you under Section 56. Now, the critical question here is the difference between impossibility and onerous. Today, the scenario that is there before us, in all likelihood, is an onerous situation, but not an impossibility situation. And the question of impossibility will have to be decided on a case-to-case and a fact-to-fact circumstances. Simply put, in the essential services sector, this is not a onerous obligation, nor is it an impossibility obligation. This is a very beneficial obligation because when everybody else is shut, only they are able to function. Similarly, online education, whether it's online entertainment or anything else, this is a boom period for them. So it is not a case of a force majeure. But then flip the coin on the other side, and you talk about manufacturing in other sectors where there's a complete closure and lockdown. To the extent that you are unable to perform the obligations for a temporary period, and please mark the word, it's a temporary period, is the court going to consider this as a force majeure? Now, this question has already been addressed by the High Court of Bombay, where a group of steel manufacturers have gone and tried to claim a force majeure event on the COVID situation and say that in light of this, I will be unable to perform my contract any longer and hence to terminate the contract. The context of why they had gone to court was primarily because they knew that in these circumstances, if they were to even perform the obligation, it is not going to be financially or monetarily gainful for them. And in their best commercial business discretion, they wanted to walk out of the contract. Unfortunately or fortunately, the court held that this is only a temporary lockdown and you will not be in a position to claim this as a force majeure for the purposes of Section 56 to walk out of your contract. Now, this is one example of what has happened on the commercial side. So therefore, it is still awaited to see whether the government and the courts are going to treat this situation as a force majeure. Second issue, on the other hand, when you come to banking, there what has happened, however, is that when the banks have tried to declare certain accounts as NPAs, the courts have stalled the banks from doing so on the ground that it is contrary to the guidelines issued by the RBI, and said that you cannot reclassify the asset, and there is a 3-month moratorium, and hence the reclassification is bad, and there has been a stay on this. Now, fundamentally, why has reclassification even been provided for? If this is not a forced measure and this is not an act of God, why should there be any kind of a reclassification even being proposed by the government? And why will the court in one circumstance say that reclassification under the notification is valid and inaccurate if the banks did it, but in the case of a private party, when they want to cancel the contract being invalid? The question is because nobody is looking into the spirit and the true intent and the meaning of what is trying to be achieved. The government is sending out very loud and clear signals that whether it is reclassification of the asset by the bank, or whether it is in terms of payment of wages, or in terms of the liability to increase the threshold from 1 lakh to 1 crore, or the moratorium for not filing any cases for 6 months, the government is evidently seeing the devil in the face of it. But very little is being done to address this issue. And the courts, unfortunately, so far at least, have not been able to go behind the real intent behind these steps by the government and classify these as force majeure events or mechanisms of this kind, an act of God, and direct or give any kind of a directive that certain positive steps has to be taken. Now, when we look at the government, fundamentally, these are welfare state policies. And then in the case of Gujarat, when Kutch had a earthquake, and you all remember, the Gujarat High Court had very clearly said that it is the responsibility of the government to look after its citizens. And here the word citizen does not mean individuals, but even companies or enterprises. They all have fundamental rights. Therefore, it is, if the migrant labor are being provided with food, with salary and wages, so that they have a right to life secured with a decent livelihood, it is an equal obligation on the government to ensure that an industry such as the MSMEs, which provides the largest level of employment and livelihood to the citizens of the country, cannot be rendered into oblivion by not providing the packages. Now, in the case of leases, on the other hand, force majeure event can never trigger, only because what it says is unless you have a clause in the lease agreement, you will not be in a position to trigger a force majeure. And unlike Section 56 of the Contract Act, for a lease, it is governed by the Transfer of Property Act under Section 108. And for exercising that, the building has to be damaged, like physical damage to the building, and you can't use it. Today, as a lawyer who's advising my clients, the problem that we are facing is, on the one hand, COVID has not physically damaged any property, but the tenants have been prevented from accessing their premises. So neither are they able to work, access the premises, but the burden of them to continue to pay their rents continues. Though the government of Telangana has come out with a GO saying that as far as rental for residential properties are concerned, there will be a 3-month deferment, and not even like a waiver, it's a deferment of 3 months. And after 3 months, the tenant can collect the rent in an installment basis without charging any interest for the rest of the term of the contract. The question is that sufficient? Why has that kind of a facility not been extended to the businesses and only for residential properties? In residences, you cannot have commercial operations. And even for a person to pay the residential rent, the income from that comes from commercial operations. But there is nothing to provide for the commercial operation to continue. Now, these are the larger issues that are being clothed today. And around these, there have been several representations, and I'm sure even you have, all of you have probably kind of gone through many of these to see how and what the requirements are. Now, I really don't have anything specific to propose in terms of what is right and what is wrong, because at the end of the day, we all know what is required and nobody needs to kind of bell the cat here. The only question is, how are we going to kind of collectively reach out, and how are we going to force upon the government or the bank or anybody else to deliver to us what is our fundamental right and what we feel is the basic necessity from reducing us into insolvency. Now, there are several concepts of law which basically say that impossibility of performance. Now, impossibility of performance due to changed circumstances can result in no liability being fastened, but that doesn't really help us because the businesses will not continue to still be active and alive. So each of us are now at a point in time where we need to reevaluate and consider, in the interest of our business, what is it that needs to be done. And let me share with you a couple of things that a couple of established industries are kind of doing right now. These are all strategic collaborations, and these are manners in which larger efficiencies and synergies are being brought together. Like, simply put, the transport sector. Now, they cannot fly on the roads, but then if they are tying up with the essential services and are making their fleet available for that purpose, then they are able to do it. Similarly, in the case of maybe pharmacies, pharmacies are now under the essential services, but now they're tying up with deliveries like the Ubers and the Olas for them to be able to function. So therefore, getting the logistics back. So a lot of these systematic synergy associations are happening to make things take through. But are they just sufficient? Because there is still going to be an issue of demand and supply and the requirement of raw material and sourcing. So broadly, I think these are the questions. These are the various aspects. And I'm happy to take any questions that any of you may have in terms of what I'm foreseeing happening in the economy right now in terms of ports or banks or anything else.
Thank you, Pawanji, for your initial remarks. I think those of you who want to ask a question could kindly raise your hand on the hand icon button that's available, and then we'll call you sequentially. But before we ask them, Pawanji, you know, what you rightly said, it's more of a, what do you say, socialistic kind of a government, which is welfare state or whatever you want to call them, MyBop government or whatever. They've first taken care of the man on the street or their voters, you know, the workers. It is for the industry to make the noise, cry, you know, shout and ask for, and then they will consider it, you know. That's the sad part. And we have to make noise. Unless we make noise, nobody's going to listen there. The bureaucracy, I'm not talking about the political leadership, I'm talking about the bureaucracy. Bureaucracy thinks the private sector is out there only to loot and, you know, make money on the wrong side. So their mindset itself is so skewed up. They think they are here to protect this country. It is very tough to break through that barrier. What you said is right. Many of these things at a policy level, the government of India should have announced already. You know, for instance, the extension of the annual year itself should have been announced. Filing with the stock exchange should have been announced. Hundreds of slew measures should have been announced. They have not done that. They are waiting for the industry to ask, you know, till then they are not going to respond. That's a sad part. And the banks are also still in the old mode. They don't want to change it. Even the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, they only have one measure, which is going concern. If it is not a going concern, they do not know how to handle it.
Right.
So whether to call this a going concern or not itself is a major question mark for them. How do they qualify their accounts, you know? As of 31st March, it's probably still a going concern, but later we don't know it's going to be there or not there. So I think entire economy is going to undergo a churning, and I think we are all in it. You rightly raised many points, and I think we'll open it up for questions. Srikanth-ji, please go ahead, sir.
Namaskar, Pawanji, Giridharji, in the team LUB and all participants. I am Srikanth from Bhagyanagar Laboratories, Balanagar. We manufacture micro fertilizers for agriculture. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you, yes.
Yes, I have few questions, some related to the banking and a few suggestions from my side in the form of questions. About 4 of them I have made a note of them. I spell them out as other. As Sagarji said, industry should represent that banks should give 25% of the existing CC limit or loan limits that is in place, currently in place to the industry. say for example, if a industry has a 1 crore limit, then 25 lakhs ad hoc should be made available without any other formalities to be done. Because most of the loans are based on collateral based, and the banks have ample leverage to do that. Apart from granting this ad hoc facility, they must also ensure that the current existing practice of the drawing power, DP as we call, should be done away with for some time, because businesses are not functioning, there's no purchase, there's no production, receivables are not coming in, they have gone out of the normal cover period. So if we were to make a stock statement today, obviously most of the accounts would be irregular and the bank would not allow us to function. So the concept of drawing power should be done away with for some time, and the full limits should be made available to the industry. This is first point. Second one, sir, is about the delayed payments that are being done for MSMEs from government, quasi-government, corporates since a very long time. Though we have a law which says that they have to pay in time, but it is, at least at this point of time, if the government steps in and ensures that all payments due to MSMEs from either a government or from a big corporate, if they have to be released within the requisite time, that would provide an immense relief to the MSME in terms of liquidity. Thirdly, regarding the labor laws, for a short period, I'm not saying for a long term, for a short period, say maybe up to 3 to 6 months, the necessity of hiring temporary labor by paying ESI and PF should be done away with, because it's already hard to find people who are willing to come to work, and then complying with most of these requirements might become tedious. And lastly, the logistics, the ease of movement of goods, at least within a particular state or a city, should be made more friendly. Because as I understand, if I were to make some dispatch of goods, one has to approach the police station with the vehicle number, the description, get a pass, and then send it. This also makes it difficult to restart the business. So these are some of my suggestions, sir. Thank you.
Pawanji, would you want to respond to some of them, or what's your views on
Sure.
that?
So Srikanth has made some very valid points, and I've kind of also discussed with Vidyasagar on these. Now, firstly, as far as the percentage mandatory payment from the banks is concerned, in fact, we've been discussing this, Srikanth. Now, the benefit of something like this is going to be that when the RBI has made the funds available to banks, the banks also should be given a mandate that X percentage is a mandatory disbursement, and the balance could be discretionary. And then you make a very valid point. So that at least takes care of the cash flows and everything else. Now, we have also been kind of talking to a couple of industry people and telling them that so far there has never been a case filed in the court challenging the delay in the refund of the monies payable by the government, whether it's the GST or anything else. Maybe this is the time. And maybe you would want to kind of evaluate that, because, at the end of the day, the legal obligation is very clear that there is a time period by which the payments have to be refunded. The delay in refunding the money at this point in time is going to hurt you even more than normal. And if you were to approach the court with a petition to say that the refunds, at least in this testing time, must be done on a priority basis, definitely there is likelihood of a very positive outcome. Now, finally, the disbursement of the funds in the government's hands, but will it or not, this is always a good thing to evaluate. And I'll be honest, there are a couple of industry bodies who are evaluating on whether to go down the path of filing a case for seeking a positive order from the court that there should not be any delays in these refunds, because the refund is my money and I need my money today more than ever for the purposes of my business operations. And as far as labor is concerned, I agree with you, Srikanth. I have nothing to differ on that.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I think next we'll ask Anil Ji. Anil Ji, please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Namaste, Pawan Garu. I have a small suggestion from my side. See, salary part, government has given ruling that we have to pay 100%. Because there is no inflow of the cash, it is becoming tough. And another way, there is a social obligation for us to look after our team. Why can't we pay them a part of salary as loans and deduct the same once the, say, the industry starts? Is there any law which is supporting this?
Sure. So Anil, it's a good point. In fact, I had written an article on whether the mandatory payment of wages as given by the MHA and the government and the Telangana government is valid or not. Now, firstly, let me clarify that the law that is applicable to businesses is under the Industrial Disputes Act. It is not under the Disaster Management Act. So whatever the government has said right now in terms of payment of mandatory wages is only obligatory and not mandatory, right? That's very clear. Also because it is morality. And I will request Mr. Vidyasagar to share the article with the group. It's very clear that even the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in their clarification to the CSR guidelines has said that the payment made under the PM Relief Fund is eligible for corporate CSR reduction, but for the CM Relief Fund is not eligible for CSR reduction. And in a follow-up question saying, will payments made to employees and workmen today qualify for a CSR? The Ministry of Corporate Affairs has very clearly said that it will not, because it is anyway your contractual obligation, and plus the disaster management is only placing a moral obligation on you. So quote unquote, the central government, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs themselves have classified this as a moral obligation. There are several High Court, Supreme Court judgments that say moral obligations are not legal obligations, they cannot be enforced. And my article will throw greater light on that. But then coming to your question now, and you can definitely evaluate what you're saying, because at the end of the day, what does the law say? It says that if contractually you're saying that you're paying somebody 100 rupees, it is a cost to company per annum. You could choose to give somebody a higher amount today, a lesser amount tomorrow. But at the end of the 12-month period, if the total compensation paid matches with the contractual amount, then you've delivered on your promise. What all companies and establishments will do typically is they would kind of bifurcate and break this up under different heads of allowances and reimbursements and everything else. Yes. As long as you are doing a basic sustenance, let us say somebody is getting about 20,000 rupees in salary. And if you're saying that today your business is not going to permit you to pay 20,000 today, and therefore you want to give only 10,000 rupees to take care of sustenance allowance, and the other 10 is going to get accumulated. It's like a deferment, like what the Telangana government has done. The Telangana government has also done a deferment of their salaries to their employees and everybody, but not a reduction of salaries. So you can also consider a deferment of the salaries, take it up later and have it paid. And I don't really see that to be, while there may be people who are unhappy with the process and who kind of go to courts or wherever else it is, but two things are clearly established. One, your bona fides in terms of not depriving them of their legitimate dues. Two, you have only deferred and not kind of reduced it voluntarily, unilaterally, because that power does not lie with you. And three, you have done it on a very bona fide basis. You have not done this during times when you are making profits. You have done this at a time when your business itself is unable to function. And therefore, what you're proposing is definitely something we've been telling people. Unlike going the Swiggy and other route in terms of trying to kind of do a layoff and removing people, when you talk about giving them a bonus and adjusting it in the future against other receivables, it is something that if amicably everybody is agreeable to, it's definitely a workable proposition.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, Pawanji, I think this has thrown up a good lesson in terms of how are you going to structure your future contracts, including employment contracts, to take care of such eventualities. So we have some workaround from all these legal bottlenecks. Maybe Laghu Udyog Bharati should interact with our Adhivakta Parishad and then come out with something to advise to the government and to the industry. Pawan Kumarji, please go ahead, sir.
Sure. So I'm getting a couple of chat questions, and I'm just going to take this up. I understand this is from Mr. Harshvardhan. I'm sorry, that's not connected. So this is with regard, this is from Mr. Vijay Kumar. So he says, in the absence of a force majeure clause in the contract, what is likely to happen. Now, in the absence of a force majeure clause, like I said, you will have to fall back on section 56 of the Contract Act. Now, like I explained before, 56 talks about impossibility of performance. So if you are in a position to explain that the period for delivery or the purpose for the contract has been frustrated completely and it cannot be delivered any longer, you can as much as walk out of your arrangement. But if you're unable to do so, then you cannot. But then again, in the case of non-payment of rental, it is not a force majeure. It is coming under 108 of the TP Act, and therefore, like I said, they can still enforce upon you a payment obligation. Yeah.
Yeah, but this force measure, don't you think it can be applied where government has forcefully denied me access to my logistics and my labor? So it's something which is beyond me. I mean, it's something which is forced upon me. Why can't I invoke that as a force measure?
Act of government.
So it's like this. Now, a force measure is something which is beyond your control, but it's deliberate. In your circumstances, it's created by the government. Now, unfortunately, like I said, the courts are treating it only as a temporary lockdown, not a permanent lockdown, right? So you're going to distinguish that. And there is a very fine distinction between impossibility of performance versus the word impossibility has been used to say that it cannot be just onerous. So let's assume the lockdown is for a period of 30 days. Has a 30-day lockdown made the performance of your contract impossible? It would only have made it onerous, correct?
No, maybe it does, because your cycle could be hurt.
I agree. So I'm saying where it does.
Case-to-case basis, yeah.
Absolutely. So where you're able to establish that it is impossible to perform, the answer is yes, it is a force measure.
Yeah, okay.
But where it has become only onerous upon you,
True.
It is not. So in the case of a lease, non-payment, not accessing your premises for a period of 30 days has not rendered your entire business shut down. Unless you're going to file for insolvency and say that in the last 30 days, now my business has come to a standstill. Like, for example, let's take the example of, like you had only suggested, event management.
Yeah.
So if an event management business has nothing to do and you're kind of closing on the operations, and therefore you can legitimately claim that now I'm not in a position to come back and restart my business, and this is an impossibility to perform, and hence I'm walking out. But in the case of an IT company, maybe you have still been working from home, and if you've been able to continue your business but not from the premises, it is not an impossibility. So you cannot. So it's a case-to-case basis.
Yeah, true. It's a case-to-case basis. Yeah. Pawanji, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. I am audible?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a small question, sir. Like, all of manufacturers, we pay ESI regularly, and then our employees get support from them. Whenever the employees are not able to attend the factory, maybe because of the health reasons or some reasons, CSI Corporation contributes 50% of their salary as a compensation. Can that law be applied in this situation? Because it's also a health emergency.
Absolutely. There is no doubt. In fact, there have been several representations already made where they've said that ESI should now take over the responsibility of the payments to the workmen, because the obligation has always been buffered by the ESI, whether it's your provident fund or the ESI contribution. These have been made for a specific purpose. Now, if in times like these, the purpose is not met, what is the sensibility of having to continue to make the contribution? The benefit of the contribution made by the employer must be given to the employer in these times, and therefore the obligation must be taken over by the ESI. In fact, a draft note is being circulated amongst the industry right now. And the last I got to know was that there is a consideration on this proposal that for the next 3 to 4 months or so, that the ESI should take over the liability partially, not entirely.
Yeah, they take 50%.
They should take over the responsibility partially so that the burden is reduced from private establishments.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
No, sorry. In addition to this, Pawan, it's not only ESI taking the responsibility. Employers, there is a note, there is a representation gone to the government that employers should borrow from ESI, pay to the workmen, and repay to ESI in 6 months or whatever it is.
There are multiple of them.
Yeah, multiple. So if ESI doesn't want to pay, or because this is not the time to keep debating and then sending representations and follow-ups and all that, the need of the hour is cash. It is just cash, you know. The need of hour is cash, and then what we are going to do post lockdown are the things, you know, which people have to sit across and then revisit everything. But somehow cash has to come into MSME system. Otherwise, a lot of units will be, you know, there are a lot of other repercussions. Labor may go, somebody may commit suicide, or somebody may go and complain to police. These are the things. So the need of the hour is, and it has to be absolutely on the timeline. It's more than 40 days. And one more thing, Pawan, we have to revisit and redefine the effect, the time which COVID affected Indian operations. As I mentioned yesterday and today, COVID has affected the normal business between banks and companies, and between big companies to small companies, that the vice president of a large corporation was not traveling from mid of February for COVID reasons. So things were not getting planned, things were not getting approved, things were not getting inspected. And for example, in one company which I know, they have an order of about 5 crore rupees from HAL. The material is ready, and then they could not travel and come and inspect the machinery or equipment, and that did not leave in the month of February. So all the cash, this company has put all the eggs into that particular project. And when you said that, is it a insolvency thing for 1 month? Yes. It is. You have to look at case to case and not, you know, generalize whether in 30 days, because whenever people are going to government, they're telling in 20 days, do you think that the whole heavens have fallen? That is not there. See, for example, for the last 3 months, there was partial hit and effect on the industry. But from mid of February, I can name the banks and institutions not traveling because of a policy taken by the board or management that top level people should not travel. And when there are big things where the top level people have to come and inspect the premises or the equipment or the industry, have not been traveling. So of course, you know, Zoom and all these webinars were being done, but then they did not do away with the inspections. So this has it. We cannot say 23rd was the date or 22nd was the date where everything has come to standstill. You have to go back to at least 4 to 5 weeks and see case to case which unit has been affected. Event management is one good thing you told, but there are many companies, because as I mentioned earlier, all the verticals of economy start accelerating their business plans. Like the banks also sanction and disperse before 31st March. Big companies also ship before 31st March. So I feel 25 to 30% of the business between February and March, which is normal average of industry, has been hit, which is by far is much more than my net profit. So yes, we are hit very badly. And as Mr. Girdhar said, we have to scream, we have to make noise. Otherwise, this is going from pillar to post. Government tells RBI has been given more money to lend to industry, whereas industry goes to the banks and banks tell that it is our discretion. There is no obligation from the bank. So my say here is, government has to invest money into the industry and keep the banks also happy. Otherwise, this will not move. And I am sure, Pawan, hundreds of units will go bankrupt, have to close. Employees will be on the streets. It will be a disaster. And once it is done, I know once it is done, restart of the whole wheel will become very difficult. So I don't want the wheel to stop. So how do we, as Telangana Laghu Udyog Bharati and also industry in Telangana, and as Pawan Kumar and my colleagues who are here, how do we take this forward and see that nothing stops? The wheel cannot stop. It takes a lot of time again to reinvent and rotate the wheel. So what do we do now?
Right. So Vidya, and we have been discussing this also. Now,
Pawanji, while you're talking, what I'll do is I'll share a snapshot with Vidyasagar ji shared with me.
Sure.
A small graph where what suggestions Laghu Udyog Bharati came up with. I'm going to display it, and you can go ahead and talk. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So, Mr. Vidya, so like we discussed a couple of days back as well. Now, mere representations to the government or the departments is not really going to give us any benefit. If you see what is happening is, even on the requirement of payment of wages and salary, people have gone to court, because eventually every decision has to be either challenged or directions have to be given by the legal forums, right? Now, I'll go back to what Srikanth had said a while back, when he talked about repayment of the refunds and everything else on time. Has anybody ever gone to court on that front? Not to my knowledge. And what stops you as an industry to kind of go and say that, if you can't at least give me that money, at least give me my money back to me, right? I'm not asking you for your money, I'm asking you for my money. Nothing stops you from going and then seeking a positive order there. Second thing is also in terms of these, it's called the argument of the constitutionality and the merit of the scheme being promoted versus the actual implementation. Are you in a position to, as an organization, go and then challenge the RBI's action and the inaction of the banks in implementing the spirit of the whole grant of funds? Now, what's going to come out of this is that, if not anything, the government and the banks will be forced to file a response in the court in terms of what is their stand vis-a-vis not granting these monies and how is the discretion being exercised. Now, everybody knows that the discretion is a very arbitrary thing. Everybody, there is no legal requirement to establish that. But if you're in a position to highlight the issue, not by representations, but by bringing it to a public forum where they are accountable to kind of disclose what is their basis and what is the parameters on which they are going to be doing it, you must, in my opinion, as an organization, challenge the inaction of these lending banks of having received the funds from the RBI, but not having percolated down to the business and thereby scuttling the economy, so that they're able to come on record and say what they have to. And thirdly, I kind of completely agree with you. There needs to be limitation of the discretion of the bank lending. If you are lucky and you're good, you will definitely be in a position to come out with a directive where it says X percentage on the basis of your current eligibility or whatever other parameters will be given to you without any questions being asked, but the rest can only be discretionary.
See, I have a suggestion, Vijay ji and Anil ji and others. This is some of these cases. I mean, you would have to go the legal route, come what may. There are many issues where you have to fight it out legally because government is insensitive. The bureaucracy is absolutely insensitive. What you said is absolutely right. 20 days, nothing is going to happen is their attitude, because they get their salary, so that they don't care. The Babus do not know what it is to take a risk and how is it to face and how is it to handle a business. They have no idea, because at the end of the month they get their salary and so they're happy. They're risk neutral. So don't expect any great thing from them. You are going to have problems and you have to take it legally. So my recommendation, my suggestion is, I think Laghu Udyog Bharati should come together, form a corpus. Each of you contribute something and you produce sufficient amount of money that you fight as Laghu Udyog Bharati, not as an individual entity. You cannot, each individually, you cannot go and face the courts of law in such a financial crunch. So let the responsibility be taken by Laghu Udyog Bharati, and a corpus to fight these legal cases should be created. That's my suggestion. Next, I would go to Indira ji. One second. Let me stop sharing this and then I'll, Indira ji, go ahead. Yeah.
So my question is to Pawan ji. The thing is, I'm a layperson as far as legal parlance is concerned. Yes, I'm not a lawyer, but my common sense says, like you equated common man with the SMEs or MSMEs, and you said when the common man is provided with money as a duty by the state because they have to protect the common man, why can't they provide to these industries? They are also like them. That is the equation. But I think common man was actually has to be protected by the government. Not only this in this democracy, even earlier kings, they used to take care of their citizens in famines, in the case of famines and droughts, and they protected them. That is the duty of the government to protect. Even kings had no obligation again to go for asking votes or something. They protected. And then here also government is duty bound, because even a person cannot take out his life. Suicide also he cannot commit, because that is also crime according to government. They are under the care of the government. My thing is, you are saying these MSMEs are also should be treated like government, but they have given the stimulus through RBI and banks that they can take. And when the situation arises, let it be started. You can't say that some accident is going to happen, so this has to be taken. So let a few months pass. If they are really critical, the government will emerge with a plan. Do you agree with this? Or my common man's question, my general sense, general this thing question, is it in any way going with the law or not?
Ma'am, you make a very valid argument, and I'll be very honest with you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Though you're not a lawyer, as you said,
yeah.
So though you may not be a lawyer, I think your logical arguments are very.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir. I'm really a layperson to all this, because MSMEs also I don't know, because I didn't work in that sphere, and so I don't know. Yeah, thank you.
So the way we're looking at it, ma'am, actually, and I'll just kind of take 2 minutes on that, is if you were to keep your company aside, your enterprise and your company aside, you are also under the umbrella of the government's welfare scheme. And in the situation like this, the government cannot simply say that I will not take care of you, but I will only take care of the migrant labor and the workforce. Your constitutional rights give you the right under your fundamental rights and the directive principles that if you're starving and you're unable to do a business, unable to get your livelihood, the government must provide you for it. Now, why is the government stepping in the case of migrant labor? It's what is important for us to understand is the circumstances are not the individual. Now, the migrant labor are the people who are working for an establishment who have been out of their work right now. Though it's an unorganized sector, they're unorganized and you're organized. You provide employment to them, and today they are on the road without a job, and therefore they're doing it. The question is, who provides employment to you? If the very organization which is supposed to provide you the opportunity to run your business is shut down, and that is the government, correct? If the government declares a lockdown, thereby preventing you from running your own business, hasn't the effect been the same? Look at how the trickle of the effect is. The government calls a lockdown, so you can't run your company. Therefore, your laborers leave your company and go out. They will be given money and ration by the government, but you will not be given anything. My point is, how are you any different from them, except the fact that in the social scheme of affairs, you are a little above in the social strata, and you are not being seen as an individual, but being seen as an entity.
Sir, for an argument, it's okay. But the thing is, actually, they have to start working. Then if they face, because it will kill some type of competition or spirit among them to work hard. Initially, if they are given, like any citizen, that will work as adversely. Let them start. Let them do their work. They may prove far better than what our expectation is now.
I'm not saying no, ma'am. I completely agree with you. But what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that everybody must be mandatorily given that money, but I'm saying that everybody must have the right to access the money if they need. So what I hear from you is, maybe even if it is available, you will not take that money because you want to challenge yourself and you want to kind of do something different within your limited means. But somebody else may be in a position to say that I will not be in a position to unless I take that money. So this is a case where we're not saying that definitely give everybody. It is not like the Trump philosophy of just saying, I will transfer money into everybody's account, whether you want it or not. What we are saying here is make the money available somewhere for me to access it when I need it. I'm not saying to me definitely. So I agree with you on that.
I think we leave it there. But then I disagree with her, because if the laborer, the transit laborer or the temporary laborer, the same argument what she's put, I stretch it on him. Let him come back to the government, say I am starving, and then the government will give. I mean, he'll have his own means of making food available, and only if he fails that, I'll give it. That doesn't fly. He need to look for employment. He need to look for food. After all his avenues are exhausted, he comes to me, then I'll pay. Government cannot say that. Similarly, you cannot say that industry has to struggle. It has to compete. Only if it fails, then you come to me. No, it doesn't happen that way. This is an emergency forcefully enforced by the government. So government is obligated to take care of the industry during this stressful time. There's no two ways about it. We'll leave it there, madam. Others will have to talk. I think Vijay Kumar ji has asked for it. Vijay Kumar ji, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Visam Shetty Garu, then Anil and Pragnabharti and Mr. Pawan himself. So I'm Vijay Kumar Gupta, past president for AP Telangana Electronics Association, All India Electronics Association, as well as RAVSA Industries Forum. Basically, now the issue of bank support is coming and how it can be deployed. There's one thing that we are talking about government paying to MSMEs. But at the same time, lots of MSMEs are owing money to other MSMEs. And this has completely stopped the circulation of the money. If banks can have one more chain of line of credit, which they say they'll only give it to their debtors, then that money will go to the debtor, and in turn the debtor will pay to other debtors. So probably there'll be double thing. One is they are helping the working capital of the company, and number two, they are also relieving the stress on his debtors, because the supplier is not able to get money, so he's not able to start his work or in right way. I think this kind of line of credit would be very good. Apart from the 10%, already my banks have, for the two companies, have given me 10% additional working capital. But then it's not enough to force my other customers to pay back my money and then get it into circulation. Pawan Garu and Visam Shetty Garu.
So, Mr. Vijay Kumar, I think what you're suggesting is a second level of the fund allocation for the purpose of the ongoing obligations that are currently being made.
Right.
Now, what happened? I mean, to broadly put, while this is an interesting concept, I would assume, however, that whoever is borrowing the money is going to be using it for the running of his operations only. Now, in the running of the operations, there could be 2 or 3 levels of allocation of funds. One could be in terms of making sure that the earlier payments to the existing vendors are cleared, so that there is a continuation in terms of business, because they have to continue to provide the services or the raw material. The second is where they may choose to kind of keep some on hold, but use it for other capital requirements in terms of what it is. So yeah, I mean, from what you're saying, if within the allocated amount, if there's a further a subdivision,
right?
I think it may not, but yeah, I think we should explore that.
I think it has a multiplier effect, because I pay to my debtor and debtor pays to his debtor and debtor that way. Probably there's a huge amount of multiplication effect. The whole economy will churn many times over. So I think that will have a much bigger thing.
Sure.
And most of the market, the distress is also because of the poor business by your customer and his inability to get back money from his market. In turn, the whole circulation is coming to stop. I don't give him material because he's not paid me earlier. He is not able to get his production on because his customer did not pay to him. There's a big change which has happened, and this can be also, this is the right time to address that also through this innovative banking credit system.
Sure.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Harshvardhan ji, do you want to talk? You had raised your hand some time back, yeah?
Yeah, actually, good afternoon, everyone. I am from Zimbabwe. I am an NRI. Of course, it may not be related to immediately what is happening with the COVID in India and all that. But on a long-term scale, I was thinking of getting or associated with people who are in the SME business to be able to have some manufacturing interests or export interests to international companies or activities in Southern Africa, where I represent.
Yeah, fine. I think today that's not the point of discussion. We are in a distress, so we are talking differently. Harshavardhan ji, I would encourage you to kindly get in touch with Vidyasagar ji, and you could take this offline. Thank you.
Okay, good, good. Thanks.
Anant ji, please go ahead. Yeah.
Good morning to you all. I'm very nice to seeing you. All my friends have covered many points. My point is, my voice is clear, sir?
Yes. Yeah. Please go ahead.
Yeah. This government orders, it is expiring by month of March. Some orders are expiring in June and all. After this lockdown, we are not able to meet the delivery schedules. The government has to extend the delivery schedules. That instructions has to give. Otherwise, they don't require the materials. They won't give the delivery period extension, and the materials are lying with us only. This is the help is required for the government suppliers. Thank you. My question is over, sir.
I think Anantkara, that is covered in the.
Yeah. I mean, this is an issue. The government needs to be sensitive. Government needs to be sensitive. I think we also raised the issue that all the governmental dues, at least they should pay immediately.
Yes.
Now, all these points did come up.
Yeah.
Government should respond to try and address. They should not add pain to the SMEs. Unfortunately, they are very insensitive. All these points we have covered actually.
We cannot go to the courts and all harsh letter writing and all, because future inquiries they won't give to us. It is very sensitive issues, and our interest also is important.
True. No escaping the pain, sir. Sadly, that is the reality. Yeah. Madhusudan Reddy garu, please go ahead, sir.
My name is Madhusudan Reddy. I am from a micro industries. I would like to talk because we are confusing the MSMEs. MSMEs is a micro, small and medium. Micro is a very small industry where unorganized sector, where the banks have funded only a small portion. The large portion is a self-investment by the micro industries. And most of the micro industries turnover cannot be more than ₹1 crore per annum. Anyway, one thing regarding the labor wages is in a layoff created by the because of they could not able to handle. Their layoff means we have to pay them only 50. We can pay 50% salary. Is it not?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. That's correct, he said. Pawanji said that is correct. Madhusudanji, Pawanji said that is correct.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
So because it's government of India has not given us even a time for us to declare it is a layoff because of the medical emergency. And another point I would like to emphasize that on ESI, we are paying ESI, that means an insurance for the employees' health. Because the government of India could not handle the emergency of the COVID-19, that means is on a help. The part of the health of the what we call employees. We are already covered by the insurance. Why we should not get? They all has to be paid by the government, by ESI, whatever the way. We did not pay because we are already covered by insurance, no?
Yeah. Okay, Girdhar garu.
In fact, that's what was already discussed, and yes. So when the whole purpose of the ESI is to take care of the employees' health and their medical requirements, this is the time that the ESI should come forward and take it up. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. So if anybody else wants to ask a question, we may take it, sir. Otherwise, we can.
Sure, sir. I just want to make one statement before we kind of close this. Now,
Yeah,
I know
sure.
a lot of us are thinking that if we do go to court and we have businesses with these departments and others, and therefore it may not be in our interest. I completely agree with you on that, because the whole purpose of an establishment or an organization is to insulate its members from the individual problems that they may end up facing if they were to go individually to the court, whether in terms of cost or future business and anything else. So therefore, one of the things and the whole purpose of an organization like yourselves is to not only represent in writing before the departments and the other organizations, but also to take it up legally before the court on behalf of your members. Yeah. So that what happens is that the individual member or the company or enterprise will not have to face any backlash or any issues that may arise by virtue of the litigation.
Yeah, that's precisely what was my suggestion. I said they need to create a corpus so that they take up these issues independent of the individual stress levels of their members. Yeah.
That's right.
So Vidyasagar ji, do you want to give some closing comments? I think we can wind it up. Hello? Vidyasagar ji. I think your voice is not coming. Yeah. Hello? I think something happened at his hand. We are unable to hear him. Vijay Kumar ji had raised his hand. I think you want to say something? Yes, sir.
Regarding the government payments, we have very strange experience. We have done 8 cities with full lighting for under ESL program for the street lighting. But we find that they take very, very long time to process the invoices. Even after 2 years, they find hundreds of mistakes and reasons not to pay. So it's a government, I think the bureaucracy and the way in which they are dealing with the payment side is really, really horrible. I think Laghu Udyog Bharati can, I don't know how they can address this, but it's a very serious one. So it's just simply asking them to pay us. It also is not possible, looks like. They have 100 reasons why they cannot pay. So when they put that on the paper, I think on their file, I don't think they'll be allowed to pay off even with the present direction from the ministry. Right?
Yeah, I mean, representations can be given, at least your material and some part of the labor cost should be given, some advance should be given, and the balance could be adjusted against the final bill. Something via media to keep the cash flow going, that can be recommended. I'm sure Laghu Udyog Bharati, you please represent, and collectively you can give a representation.
Okay.
That's possible.
There should be very specific enabling to the each government department to pay, if in case the outstanding is large, at least pay 90% or something and hold 10% back to take care of the collections.
Yeah. See, the recommendation has to be specific. So what I suggest is, please keep in touch with the Laghu Udyog Bharati team members and come up with specific suggestions, so we will be able to, they will be able to represent. Thank you, sir. Vidyasagar ji, I think your mic has gone, some problem with that, right? So I think we'll leave it there. I think we are now 1.5 hours into the program. We've had a decent, healthy discussion. We all know the pain points. I think Laghu Udyog Bharati did recommend some things to the government which are very specific and very, very crucial at this point in time. And the members are free to add to that, suggest more such things which maybe industry specific or maybe unit specific issues are there. Even those should be added. Laghu Udyog Bharati, I'm sure it will take it up. And we in Pragya Bharati are also trying to look at some of these pain points. We are also trying to come up with, not just for SMEs, but generally for the economy as a whole, we are also trying to come up with certain recommendations. Like in my initial remarks, I had spoken about how the Institute of Chartered Accountant does not understand beyond the going concern or a bankruptcy. Between that, there is nothing via media for that. So now the concepts need to be revisited. So let's see how it goes. All of us are in a learning phase now, challenging and learning phase. So legally, from compliance's point of view, from finances point of view, banks, governmental response, we have a lot of challenges. So I think we should continue these conversations. We'll be able to evolve ways and means and share our experience and then go forward. Thanks a lot to all of you for sparing your time today. I know a lot of you are still working, though we are locked down. We are working in some form or other. I would recommend all of you to keep in touch with Prajna Bharati or Laghu Udyog Bharati, and collectively let us try and do what best we can in this circumstance. And till the next date of meeting is announced, I thank all of you for having joined this morning. Namaste.
Thank you, everyone.